Hi everyone, welcome back. So we're going to continue on here with module 2.1 and in this lesson we're going to learn how to make a histogram. In the last lesson we learned how to make a bar chart. A histogram is kind of like a bar chart, it looks like a bar chart, but its function is very different. Whereas a bar chart or column chart would be used to compare values across cases or categories, a histogram is used to basically view the distribution of a variable. It counts the number of observations in bins, and then that shows us whether the distribution is normal or skewed or what have you. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started, and I'll just show you what I mean here. And we will call this section histograms, and we'll add a code chunk and we'll label it. So here we're going to use the data from the Dem Women CSV file that we saved in the last lesson. But we're going to filter it for just 1 year, 2015. So we're going to take Dem Women, read it in using readr, and we're going to filter it and store it in this object called dem underscore women underscore 2015. So here we're going to use read CSV from the readr package, and our data are in our data file, our data subdirectory, and they are in a file called dem underscore women.csv. Okay, and then we're going to use a pipe operator because here again we want to filter just for 1 year. Year equals 2015. Okay, next we're going to make our histogram. We will call ggplot, and then our data here that we're going to use are dem underscore women underscore 2015. Remember, the first argument is the data, and then the second argument is the mapping wrapped in this AES quoting function. So AES, and we only have one dimension here that we need to specify for a histogram, and that's the x-axis, okay? Because the y is just going to be a count of observations falling in different bins. Okay, and so that's the first line, and then from there we need to add our geom, and in this case it's going to be geom histogram, and then we can say fill equals steel blue again and have a look at our histogram. Okay, and there it is. And so we can see that this is not a normal distribution. If this was normally distributed, we'd see a nice bell-shaped curve here. Instead, we see something more like a bimodal distribution, but we have a big spike at the end here of countries with really high polyarchy scores. So that's kind of interesting. So we can conclude from this that polyarchy is not normally distributed, or democracy is not normally distributed. So from here, let's go ahead and add some labels just to pretty it up a little bit. And we can add an x-axis, a new x-axis label, polyarchy. Let's call it polyarchy score 2015. Y, let's call that count because that's what it is. We can add a title, distribution of democracy 2015, and we can add a caption equals source the Dem Institute. Okay, and let's run that. Oh, and it didn't like something. It looks like I missed a comma there. Nope, didn't like something again. What's wrong this time? I missed another comma. Okay, there we have our histogram. Okay, so there's a couple of other parameters we can add here. So if we want to alter the number of bins, the default is 30. So let's say we want to have thicker bins instead. So we could change the number of bins to 20, for example, and see what that looks like. And there we get a thicker bin and a less fine-grained picture of what's going on. And let's say we wanted a more fine-grained picture, we can change the number of bins to 40. And that gives us a more fine-grained picture. Or we could also change the bin width, which has the same function essentially. We can say, for example, the bin width should be 0.10, which should give us slightly fewer bins, or maybe many fewer bins. Let's see what happens. Maybe a total of 10 bins. Yes, so much thicker bins. And as you can see, the count in each bin is much higher as a result. Or we could try make the bins smaller, so let's say 0.05 instead, and double the number of bins there, etc. And then we can also, of course, let's go back to our default bin width. We can also just do histogram for different variables in the data set just by changing our x variable here. So let's say we wanted to look at GDP per capita instead of polyarchy, we could do that. But of course, so that looks a little bit more like left skewed. But of course we'd want to change our title there. Good now. Okay, there we go. So that we can see is a little bit more left skewed. And let's go ahead and try one more variable here. Let's see what's in the data set here. Glimpse, Dem Women 2015. GDP per capita. And let's just look at women's representation. See how that's distributed. Call this x-axis percent legislators who are women, and we will call this distribution of women's representation. And the source here is actually the World Bank. There we go. And this looks maybe slightly more normally distributed, but still has a little bit of a left skew to it. But in any case, that's how we make a histogram. And in the next lesson, we're going to learn how to make line charts. See you there.